Hello, viewer, and welcome to Spotlight here on Hope TV, where you look and live. And on Spotlight, we always do our very best to bring to you persons and subjects which we feel are informed by your feedback here. And we know that once we bring them to you, then they will transform you, they will inform you in a way that makes you one who lives better as a Christian in the community. And have you ever thought about adoption? Now, this month is the International Adoption Awareness Month. Now, maybe you have thought about it, at some point. Maybe you are adopted yourself, and maybe sometimes you have so many questions around adoption. Now, this is your program to know all about adoption. And even as we think about adoption, let's remember that Jesus Christ, we as Christians, we are, through Christ, adopted into the family of God. Amazing, right? So adoption is not so far away as we may think. It's very close to us because in the family of God, we actually have been grafted there. We have been adopted. Now, in real life too, adoption is an important topic, an important subject for us to engage, and we are glad to be joined on this program by members of the Adoptive Families Association of Kenya. And that is Andre Kareithi, who is the chair of Adoptive Families Association of Kenya. Welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you very much.
Also happy to be joined by Wanjiro Kaniaro, who herself has adopted children, and it would be nice to just hear your experiences both, because you have both been experienced adoption. You have children already who you have adopted into your families. Fantastic conversation, looking forward to it. And viewer, do engage us on our social media pages. Do also engage us on our text line, that is 22232, our text message line. Engage us as we talk about adoption on this Spotlight edition. And it's just right for us to start with you, Andre.
Right.
And some of our viewers could be hearing the Adoptive Families Association of Kenya for the very first time. Tell us a little bit about what it is about.
Thanks a lot, Barry. Adoptive Families Association of Kenya is a society that was registered in 2019, but has its membership from way back, probably 2015, thereabouts. And it brings together families, both traditional, which involve a father and mother as a couple, a married couple, as well as single-parent families, where you have single ladies who have adopted female children, and males who have adopted male children. So that's a constitution, and we organize events, informative events, also fun-based events, just to bond together and sort of become a support for each other, as those who are joining into the family of adoption get to understand how to do it right. We help them with legal advice, direct them to the proper legal practitioners, also help them through the court process in terms of being there for them as what we call guardian ad litems, and generally just help them through the parenting process so that they have as much success with their new children and as new families as possible.
All right. Yeah. I think that's a very unique organization.
Absolutely, it is.
And anyone who is thinking about adoption, is good to know that there is actually an organization that takes care of those people, or brings together those people who have gone the way of adoption. And that tells you you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, coming to you, Wanjiro, you have adopted.
Yes, I have.
And we want you to tell us, the children you adopted, boys, girls, 1, 2, just tell us.
Okay, thank you. I've actually adopted 2 girls. One was adopted when she was about 8 months old, and the second one when she was 7 years old, 7.5 years old.
All right.
Yes.
Did you adopt at the same time or at different times?
Very different times. When I got my second born, or my second child, the first one was about 12, 13 years. Yes.
And Andre also, because
Yes.
you have also adopted children.
Yes.
It says about the children you've adopted.
Okay, we have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. So there's the eldest girl, who's about 16 now, came in at 8 months. And then there's a boy, and then there's a girl who we brought in just a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, you adopted the children at different times?
Oh, yes, different times. I mean, between 2006 and 2021. Okay. So you can see that space.
Let's talk about that, because adopting is not, it's not a decision that I would imagine you just make, right?
Yeah.
It's maybe one that takes a long time, and sometimes a lot of prayer, I would imagine, a lot of questions, a lot of, going through the myths of adoption, the whole thing. And would want to hear from you, Wanjiro. How did you decide to adopt?
Well, I grew up as a reader. I read a lot of books. And somehow books about adoption fell into my hands, many of them. And it sounded beautiful. And I remember from as early as standard 3, I just said, one day I'll adopt. Yeah, I just knew one day I'd adopt. And as I grew up, the career I got into cemented the desire even more, because I'm a kindergarten teacher. And I really like children, and I was not married, and the only way to have children was to adopt.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so it's something that grew with you.
Yes.
From a tender age.
Yes.
Which is interesting when you think about it.
Yes.
Andre,
Yeah.
Why do you decide to adopt?
I think in the same breath, I had made up my mind to adopt many years back. I can't remember particularly meeting an adoptive family or even an adopted person, but it fell into my heart that I would love to have a child that's not mine and bless them, that they would be part of my family as well. Okay. Came up in a very caring family, my mom especially owning a shop and taking care of lots of families that were disadvantaged. I would see how she would help these families out there. They would come without money and she would just give them, all sorts of groceries. And having that inculcated in my heart, I think I felt I would like to help somebody directly, somebody living in my house. And I communicated that to my wife before we even got married. And little did I know that this would actually be, our path. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting how you were kind of prepared long before.
Yeah.
So when the moment came and you had to go that way, then it had already sat in your spirit.
For me.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't the same for my wife.
Okay.
Yeah, so we needed a bit of time for that to happen. And obviously, we were still waiting on God for children, our own biological children, which we still are. Even after 24 years in marriage, we still believe that that is possible. But that didn't stop us. And yeah, so for me, that was straightforward. But for my wife, she needed to grow into it, and she did. Yeah.
And Wanjiro, thinking about adoption, yes, you got this thought and willingness from early out in your life. But when it came to really making the decision, what are some of the anxieties that you had to overcome?
Okay, when I was a little younger, I think if I adopt, I will never get married. So for a long time, I didn't adopt because I thought if I adopt, I will never get married. No one will want me with an adopted child. But I did adopt, and I'm still not married. So that sorted itself out. Yeah. Then I thought, what if my family do not accept this person? Because she has to be part of the family, not just my child. That's why I gave up the family name, because she's part of the family. But God worked it out that they encouraged me to go for adoption, because I really, really wanted a child. And I even wanted to take my cousin's babies. They're like, no, just go to children, someone get a baby, leave your cousin's children alone. So that's how God opened up the acceptance. Because at first they found it difficult to understand that I could get a child who's not my own and bring them up as my own. They're like, why don't you just get your own child? So I tell them, no, I just know God has called me to adopt.
Okay.
So finally they gave me the green light and I said, I'll even take my cousin's babies if you won't allow me to. And they accepted my babies. They love my children very much.
Great. And I'm just thinking about that moment of adopting, a critical moment really. And when it comes to a couple, like now you had already traveled the journey way out, and you just told us that your dear wife had to travel the journey and you had to wait for her to do that. How does that feel like?
Well, because you're close to each other and you know that you both have the best interests of the family at heart, nobody would want to rush the other. So for us, it was very much a wait and see. So 2 years into the marriage, I brought in the question of, you remember that conversation we had? Do you think this is a good time? And she was like, no, I still need to wait. I haven't had God, you know. And I waited, and I asked a year later, and it was still not time. But by the 4th year, she herself approached me and said, that thing you were talking about, can we consider it now? And I was elated and embraced it, and we went for the papers immediately, picked them up, filled them out. It did take time. I don't know what happened to us when the moment came to now really submit and get interviewed. It took us about more than 6 months to get those papers off the shelf and into the adoption agency. But eventually we did.
Okay.
And went through the process.
All right.
Yeah.
And Wanjiro, the adoption, what did you say is the best part of adopting? I mean, what are your joys now that you have adopted 2 girls? What's the joyful part of that?
I think like any parent, seeing them from little growing into people who know they are loved and who know, besides being loved by people, they are loved by God, and God has chosen them to be part of this family. They are sure beyond all knowing that it's a God thing. It's not just a mommy thing or a personal thing. It's a God thing. I think for me that's the biggest joy. That surety they have that there's someone who's got their back, no matter what.
Okay.
Yes.
That's. Are there some times when Jiro, you feel like there's a strained feeling between you and your adopted children? You feel like there's that reality that you physically don't belong together, biologically don't belong together. Does that hit you sometimes, and how do you deal with it?
I wouldn't say that, but I would say when there are challenges, when I was growing up, they would ask me, who are you? Whose are you when you're doing the wrong thing? But I wouldn't say that there's that feeling of like you're estranged or disconnected. Because like I said, it's a God thing. It is a God thing.
Okay.
And I see like no matter what the challenges we go through, I tell them we are in for this together until where God will take us. There's no way that we'll ever be separated. It's only God who will separate us. And for me, that is knowing beyond all knowing. So I wouldn't say that when the challenges come, I would even consider ever that we could be disconnected with my children for any reason whatsoever.
All right.
Yeah.
And Andre, the feeling, I'm just trying to ask on behalf of our viewers.
Sometimes.
Just the feeling of, when you have your biological child, you have like that blood connection. There's a blood feeling, right? But now the adoption has its own rich feeling, but it's different. It's different from the biological. So is it spiritual? What's the feeling? What's the adoption feeling?
I think for me, it's very much an innate feeling, something that God God has planted in each of our hearts, to the extent that I would dare say that it is not different in any way as that feeling you would have between you and your biological child. The feelings I had towards my mother or my father are the same feelings that I have for my son and my daughters. It has never occurred to me to consider them different from me because we are not connected by blood. And the fact that we all look different doesn't change it in any way. And even when we speak about it openly, because we have done something called disclosure to all our children, we have never found them to be different, and we have never seen them respond to us as if we were different. Probably as they grow, because some of them are now entering teenage, that might come up. But I would say it's the same way that I behaved towards my parents when I got into teenage. I wanted to rebel. I wanted to be independent, as it were, to sort of like show them I'm a different person. I'm no longer a child. I think that happens naturally for each of them. But for us, there is that resolve that we must give them unconditional love. And it doesn't come because we are like actively thinking about it. It just flows out of the heart. And that happens a lot even when we are disciplining them. We will not say we need to hold back the discipline because, you know, this is an adopt. It never comes up. And I think even at some point during the marriage, we said that we need to stop explaining to people that, you know, these are our children and they are adopted. We kicked that out because I've never seen somebody come to me and tell me, oh, this is my child and I got them through CS. Or this is my child and, you know, they were an ectopic pregnancy. Nobody bothers to tell me that. So the way I gave birth to them through my heart is a way of giving birth as well, you know, and I have never felt apologetic about that. So really, to answer your question, it's a spiritual feeling. It's something that God plants in you so that you find you can easily fall in love with a person of a different race and love them completely. And you never think that, oh, I'm African and she's Caucasian. You know, it never shows up. Because once you've decided that this is a person I love, the rest is, you know, a bond which God has put in place and can't be separated.
You know, I like what you've said, the way I gave birth to them through my heart. That's powerful, right? It's powerful. Giving birth through the heart.
Yes.
Now, Wanjiro, the viewers who are watching, some say, oh, adoption is a good thing, but it's not for me, right? It's not for me. So would you say from your experience that adoption is for some and not for others?
I wouldn't say that. I think adoption can be for anyone, but your heart must be open to receive. If you've closed your heart and it's not open to receive, then it's not for you. But just like the same way he talked about marriage and him loving his wife, he had to open his heart to love. Otherwise, or if you're married, you have to open your heart to love. It's the same when you adopt a child, you must open your heart to love that child unconditionally. So in that sense, it's for everyone whose heart is open to love.
Okay.
Yes.
It's for everyone whose heart is open.
It's open to love.
It's for everyone.
Yes.
But your heart must be open.
Must be open.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
There's a very good reality there. Let me come back to you, Andre, and especially that moment when you have your wife and yourself, and you have said you still expect biological children.
Yes.
So how do you balance that out? How do you balance out the fact that I have 3 children who are adopted, and I also hope for biological children? I mean, how do you process that?
I think it's a God thing. You have to put it all in God's hands. I know of very many cases where, couples have split up because either the wife or the husband is not in a position to, provide the seed or the womb for the, conception to happen. And they have separated. So you have to say that it's God to decide when to do the miracle, okay? And so for us, the decision was fine. We don't know when that will happen, but in the meantime, there is a load of children out there that are waiting to be loved, to be cared for.
To be born through the heart.
Be born through the heart.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing was when we brought in our first child, we thought, initially that, you're helping, you're providing a place for shelter and love and, other provisions for this child. Little did we know that this would actually be the source of healing for us as well. Because, while you're waiting, it's like there's a void, okay? But then this child comes and fully fills the void. You don't get any thirst or hunger, as it were. I don't know what you would call it. That emptiness gets completely filled up because this child looks up in every way to you and calls you daddy and calls, mommy. And they are not reserving it in any way. And so you find yourself fully also given, to that child. And in every sort of way. So there's a misconception that people think that this child, because they were not born to you biologically, that you might not love them. We have 3 children, and there is no space for us that's left.
There's actually room for more.
There's room for more.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a very nice discussion. Sometimes very emotional. And Wanjiru, as a single parent, we know single parents who have biological children, right?
Yep.
And now you're a single parent who has adopted children. Now, is there a difference in singlehood when you think about that?
Well, of course, if you're a parent with a single or whether through adoption or through biological means, and you're single, it's a whole different ballgame because now your life is no longer your own. Yeah, as in now you give your life to someone totally and completely and thoroughly, and life can never be as was before they came. It will never be as was, and can never be. And so there is a big difference between, say, myself as a single adoptive parent and my friends who are single with no children. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just clarify for us a little bit more about the difference. I like the way you say, I have friends who are single and have biological children, and I have children, but they are adopted.
Yes.
What more dynamics do you find as different between the two kinds of parenting?
No, I think I think parenting is, if you want to do it for God's glory, it will be parenting to please God. But if you are single and have no children, like your resources are your resources. You can do what, like some of my friends who are single without children, they fly out of the country at any time. They would want us to go out partying. I don't party now because I have people to consider. My resources are tied up now between us as a family, so it's totally different. But whether they're biological or adopted, it's a total different ballgame.
All right.
Yeah.
No, when we come back, I'll ask you a question on whether there are many young women who want families, but for one reason or other, they've not gotten husbands, right? But they have a desire for children.
Yes.
I'd want you to maybe tell them, to speak to them, and tell them whether it is a good thing for them to consider adoption. When we come back after the break, viewer, we are talking about adoption, and we are happy to have Andre and Onjiro, who are members of the Adoptive Families Association of Kenya, and they themselves have adopted vibrant children, and they have vibrant families out of adoption. And do send us your question, engage us on our social media pages. Let's hear what you have to say about this discussion. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back. This is Spotlight.
Last week on Testify.
Kwenda kupiga kona hivi vitu tunasikia waizi ndia waizi. Nikaachilia TV chini. Tukapenya penya hivi unajua vile tuachilia zile vitu chini ilisaidia. Sasa wale watu wakoma tu kwa zile vitu.
Watch part 2 of Frederick Otieno's testimony on how he was reformed and got born again.
Na maisha yako kutoka ubadilike ukiangalia nyuma, yani unaonanga Mungu alikufanya nini?
Mungu nilianza nikisema wacha Mungu aitwe. Wacha Mungu aitwe. Mungu akisema atakubadilisha atakubadilisha. Na ukimrudia anajua roho ile inaweza mrudia. Mungu hujua roho ya mwanadamu.
Only on Hope TV. Look and live.
You know we can't forget them. And neither can you. Enjoy all-time classics every Thursday at 11 a.m. Hope TV is now available on GoTV Channel 103, Zuku Channel 873, Signet Channel 817, and Star Times Channel 026. Enjoy our uplifting content and family-friendly programming anytime. Hope TV, you look and live.
Back. This is Spotlight, and we are talking about adoption. Also, this month is the Adoption Awareness Month internationally, and it's just right for us to engage this discussion and what perspectives we are gaining from these wonderful guests here, Andre and Wanjiro. And again, do engage us. Let's hear what you have to say about adoption. And just before we went for the break, we're talking about the single ladies who wait for husbands and desire to have children in that context of a husband and wife. And sometimes they wait for a long time. Would you recommend, would you recommend adoption, to them as a good way, or what would you say to them?
Yes, I think it is. For me, I'm biased. I say it's the best way.
Yeah.
Because one thing I do know for sure is that if you really want to do something and you have the dream of having a child, God has given us many options. Adoption is one of them. And if you explore that option of adoption, I know beyond all knowing that when he comes along, the husband, he will have you and your child. So the fact that the husband has not come should not stop you. God will bring someone who will love you and your child, whether they are adopted or not.
Okay.
So I would say adoption is the way to go. There are so many children who need love, and you two have a need to give love. So you will connect and give each other love, and it will be the very best way. Okay. I'm a witness of that fact. Yes.
All right. I like the aspect that when the husband comes,
yes,
they'll take you and your child.
Absolutely.
And
yes,
they'll adopt you.
Yes, absolutely.
You and your child.
Yes.
Now, sometimes, Andre, people think that adoption is for the affluent. It's for families that have money, right?
Yeah.
And if you can just break down that for us, is adoption expensive?
Well, that's a relative term, but I would say, or discount it by saying, no, it is not. Because in Kenya, we have the government allowing anybody to adopt as long as they go through a formal process, which allows the interested parties to have a look at what would entail a safe environment for this child. So basically, when the government is considering whether they should allow you to adopt, they will involve the Children's Department, which is a department of one of the ministries in government. that will, and then together with the adoptive agency, they will interview you and find out whether you're a suitable parent by asking you why you want to adopt. They will want to know from you whether you have a source of income, where you live, and then the children's department and the adoptive agency will visit you. They'll make several visits to your home just to see that you have a conducive environment for children to live in. Not that you will have, all sorts of opulence and toys and stuff like that in your house, but basically to say that this child will have a bed to sleep on, will have the necessary beddings to sleep on, will have clothing, and you have a kitchen, a place where you cook from, and that you're able to provide for this child. They will look at your source of income, which has nothing to do with the amount of money you're keeping in the account, but really just to see that you have a constant flow of income, that this child, when they come to your home, they will find food and clothing and shelter. So it's just as much as that. Of course, there is also at the tail end, a legal process. And, there are lawyers to also deal with who will help you through the process. But now we even have parents who have decided to self-represent in court. So that's more or less like a zero charges kind of thing. But even if you decide that you are not, doing it yourself, self-representing, there are many lawyers out there who are considerate and will give you a very fair price, maybe even, stagger the payments so that it's affordable for you. Yeah. Okay. So it's not an expensive process.
Okay. But that's good to know.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Not expensive process, but maybe there's something hard about the process or hard about the experience. Wanjiro, if there was something you would say this was tough, what would that be?
Okay, first of all, to reiterate what Andre said, actually self-represented for the second child, my second adoption, and it was very doable and very affordable. The first one went through lawyers, because at that time, I think the option of self-representing was not there, or if it was there, we didn't know. And also adoption was not as common as it is now. So self-representation works, and the cost becomes very, very minimal. Yes.
Okay.
And very affordable.
All right.
Yes. So what did you ask?
I asked, it's good to know that it's an affordable process.
Yes.
But there must be something that you felt was hard either through the process or through the emotional process, the legal process, or through the emotional processing of the whole adoption, adopting aspect. What would you say was hard? I
think what was hardest then is we didn't have options of different agencies. There was only one agency. And it was really hard because for about a year, we just after them to come and visit, because they have to visit the home so they can write a report so that you can go through the legal process. And for a year, they wouldn't come because I think maybe they were overwhelmed, overworked. I don't know. So that was really, really hard because they kept thinking, we can't move on. We can't go on with the legal process until they come. So they did finally come. And even then, after they came and we went to court twice or thrice, once they didn't turn up. Second time, they came with the wrong report. So that is, you have to keep on postponing. Our case was postponed about 6 times then, because there really wasn't as many options as there are today. So that was very frustrating. And even till today, there's the adoptions are done in the High Court, and you're assigned a particular judge, or a particular judge is assigned your case. You'd go, and then you find, oh no, they're sick, they're not well, they're not in the court. So it really stretched and stretched. And for mine took about almost 2 years. Yeah. So that was really hard for me because I kept thinking, what if they take away my child, before I've gone through the legal process. And emotionally, that was very, very hard for me, Yeah, but today it's very, very different. I've been guardian for many people, it's a dream. You just almost walk through. It's not like them.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's good. It's good that the process is becoming
It's
easier
very easy now.
today.
It's very easy now.
Yeah. And what about, because sometimes we feel that adoption is for families that do not have biological children. What would you say to families that have biological children and have never considered adoption? Whereas, as you say, it's just a different kind of birthing
Yes.
from the heart.
Yes. And that, absolutely. I mean, I have experienced many families that have biological children and then have also adopted. And the interesting thing is the way you find the bonding between those born from these parents and the one that has come. The connection between this set of children is so natural that you hardly can tell that the children are different. Thank God that, when children are born of a family, they don't all look the same. So even when they are joined by another, they will more or less begin to take after one another. Interestingly, even where there is, a marked difference, like in race, where, an African child will go into a European family or vice versa, really the difference is not there because these children really bond. The same is to be said for parents who are adopting that child. I think for me, the bottom line really is how you share that love, and even for a child that you've given birth to, if your love for that child is conditional on how they perform or whether they obey what you say, or whatever set of rules that you may have set to say that I will only love you when you perform or when you do this or that, then that conditional love even causes a biological child to be wayward. But if you love this child, whether they're yours or adopted, unconditionally, that love is given back. And so you find this child grows in an environment that is caring, and they never have to consider those things. It might possibly come up in adulthood when somebody wants to find, their way, and yes, I know that I'm adopted, I want to find my biological parent, and it's good to allow your child to take that route. But coming back to the topic is that I think that there is no difference, and I would really encourage it. Because there's so many of our children out there. As a matter of fact, the law now is encouraging, there is a push by government to have as many children join families, either through fostering or kinship or guardianship, to come into homes, whether or not they were their biological children or relatives for that matter. So the government itself is saying, we want children off the streets. We want children out of charitable, institutions. We want these children to go back into society, join their relatives and the communities that they have come from, and live a normal life. And, that is really already a very African concept in the first place. Okay. So very natural to.
All right.
Yes.
That's quite eye-opening when you think about it.
Yeah.
Wanjiro, there's a family that that is asking, I mean, how do you pick a child? You have maybe, you want a girl, right?
Yes.
And then there are 3 girls that you find in these children's home, or, how do you pick the dilemma of picking the children? How does that happen? How do you help such a family?
It's a very big dilemma that's actually taken out of your hands by law. Because by the Kenyan laws, you cannot pick a child. It's called preselection. And preselection is actually a crime. If you want to adopt. What happens? You go to an adoption society, and they will match you the child. Yeah, they will match you the child, and to be just the right child for you.
All right.
It's uncanny the way it works out. Yes.
So you don't. There's no preselection.
There's no preselection. It's not allowed by the law of Kenya.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Let me go back to a biological birthplace.
Yes.
When a parent holds a baby or beholds their baby for the very first time, a lot of emotions of gladness mostly come to that, come to the person. Because this baby now is selected for you, when you behold them, right? I mean, how do you feel like, yeah, this is the right child? Do you sometimes wonder, I mean, what happened? I mean, what's the moment like? Honestly.
With all due respect and very honestly, you don't really select a biological child. You get a child that's selected for you already from the womb.
Yeah.
And you cannot say, I selected him because he was big, he was fat, he was tall, he was intelligent. Isn't it? Yeah, God does it for you. It's the same with adoption. When that child is it's selected, so to speak, you more often than not, there will be that instant connection. The only time there will not be connection is if you have conditions for the child you want. Some people go there with I want a child who looks like this and like this, who has this and the other, and if I don't get that, that's it, But if you do that, then there will be no that connection, because you'll always be looking for something that is maybe not there or there. Yes.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that once a child is selected and you get to bond with them, they become what you wanted them to be. And that love floods their heart. I know that has happened to many, many people, regardless of whether they look very different from you or not. Yeah, as long as you're open to love, I go back, and to love unconditionally, without conditions. I think if you go with adoption with conditions, then it's bound to be a big disappointment. Yeah, but if you go with knowing beyond all knowing that it's unconditional love, then it will work out. And like a friend of mine told me, because she told me that if you are going to adopt and you have conditions, she told me there are parents who have conditions for their own biological children. It doesn't work. So, but the only way to know that it will work is by you holding that child. Yeah, like for sure, like my first girl, when I held her, for sure, I knew that I knew. She was supposed to be my daughter beyond all knowing. Yes.
All right. That's very enlightening for many people,
Yes.
right? And Andre, what would you say has been a big blessing that has come upon you for going this adoption way?
I think that there's replete, things that I would say that make me glad. Number one is to see these children grow up and come from that infancy into human beings that can talk, express themselves, communicate with others, and be, useful in the home and out of the home. These children have grown to be helpful to society. They participate in church and, do what other children are able to do. So there's that feeling of satisfaction in seeing that the Lord has used you to make this child grow up into a complete person, somebody who the Lord intended them to be. So for us, we look at it as a mission, something that God has called us to do on his behalf. And so when we see that these children are able to know God, and that they are able to serve and love this God for themselves, that for us is everything. We don't even think that, they'll probably be lawyers or doctors or business people. The most important thing for us is that we thank God that he has helped us to plant a seed in these children, and they, out of their own volition, have decided to follow after this God. So everything else becomes, just additional on that. But the fact that these children now profess God as their own God, Christ as their own Savior, that for us is everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a little earlier, you talked about disclosure, right?
Yes.
Let's come to you, Wanjiru, on that matter. At some point, you'd have to disclose to the children about their adoption. how did you, what's that and how did you do it yourself?
I think I was very, very blessed when I wanted to adopt because God put the right people in my life. And I remember when I met my daughter, before I'd taken her home, when she was still at the home, the children's home, I met a lady, and for the life of me, I can't even remember her name. All I know is she's from Germany. And she told me, now that you're holding this baby and you're loving this baby so much, make sure when you're changing her diapers, you tell her, you're born from my heart. And make sure whatever you're doing from her, you often tell her that you're born from the heart. Because she told me something which was very true, that you love this child so much, you'll not want even to think of her as being adopted. You'll even be hurt if someone says she's adopted. So make sure you constantly use those words. No matter what you do, you always tell her you're born from my heart. Though she was a baby, remember she was 8 months old. And so I listened to that lady, and I always told her, you're born from my heart, and I love you with all my heart. And then also we used to go to the children's home very often with her. We stopped going during COVID times, but we've always gone to the children's home where they came from and others. So they pray for children to get home. So because they've always known that they're adopted. There's now, okay, the older one was 7.5. So she knew she came at 7.5. But even at the time she'd come, there's a day she asked me, how comes you don't have my baby clothes? So I'm like, oh, okay, wait, I'll get them for you. So I went back to the home and got baby clothes because it's like she's forgotten that she was adopted. It's like that part of her life is out of her. So for me, it has not been an issue because I knew that anything good is not secretive. That's what I've always known. So if you keep secret, normally it's not about something very positive. So for me, I knew that it would always be open. And you know, I wanted her to come in a community, not as my child, but a child belonging to the family and the community. So I wanted her to know. That even when came and told her, you know, the way Kenyans say you've been bought, she can say, I'm not being bought. I'm adopted. And I know that adoption means love. Because I told her, you know, adoption means that you're really, really loved. I always tell her when she was a baby, she used to say adoption means love. She didn't know how to say adoption. Yeah, so we came from the part where I don't really say I had to disclose. Because me, I believe secrets are not always positive.
Wow.
They are really positive.
You know, very profound statement there, that good things are not secretive.
Yes, they cannot be.
That's powerful,
Yes.
right? It's a powerful. And Andre, your experience in terms of, no, she doesn't like the word disclosure.
Yeah.
But it's there. Let's use it.
Yes.
Let's use it, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So how was that disclosure moment, both for you and for your children?
Yeah. I think we decided at an early stage that this is something that we would do for our children. More from the concern that when society reveals this fact to the child, it may be done in a way that is hurtful and that may prevent that child from growing, feeling that they are normal. And so when our daughter, her mental development was pretty fast. So as early as 3, 4, 5 there, we already started seeing that this child could understand this concept, the concept of adoption. And so I remember clearly at 5, that was the first time we sat her down and talked to her from the basis of the Bible, what adoption was. And so we spoke about, you know, Bible characters, starting with people like Moses, who in a form or other were an adopted child, and so on and so forth. And then we spoke about Christ and the way he has, you know, engrafted us into the kingdom of God through a process of adoption. And that we all are adopted, you know, when it comes to things of the kingdom. So, and then again at 7, at 8, and at every stage we thought that, you know, for us it was unique. I don't know how it is for biological parents with biological children. But for us, we could tell when a change moment has happened. Like this child has woken up this morning and they are different than they were in the past. They are a new person. And whenever that happened to us, and for all our 3 children, we thought this is a new moment to repeat that thing to them so that they're clear in their mind that this is it. So On our part, we have never been anxious. We just know that that is our responsibility, that we need to tell them, so that nobody out there tells them and causes them to feel awkward. So if you feel it's a problem for you out there, then when you bring it into our family, you will find that it's a very normal thing to us. We talk about it, we discuss it, we watch movies and, relating to that topic. And we are yet to see our children behave abnormally when it comes to that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So,
I mean, very, very affirming and very encouraging responses there, because some of these are the anxieties that
absolutely.
Potential people who'd want to adopt are wrestling with in their heads.
How do you tell?
And one of those, a certain anxiety or fear that adoption can go totally wrong. Like a child can go totally wayward until a point you're like, did I do the right thing?
Yeah.
You know? And how do you process that, that kind of feeling like, what if, how would you tell the people who are watching and they feel like, what if it went so wrong? Just speak to them.
Actually, that was one of my fears. I was like, what if it goes totally wrong? And this child just decides they don't like me, they hate me, they want to rebel, and etc. And the way God worked it in my heart is I knew of a family. Oh, I knew of quite a few families, even among my relatives, who have 1 or 2 children who've gone haywire, but they are not adopted. They're very much biological. So I worked it out with God. Should it go that way, and I pray it won't, I'll still love them unconditionally, because none of them have sent away their children. In fact, they would do anything to bring them closer. So for me, God sorted me that way. So you don't go there with the expectation that this child has to be just so, It's like, that farmer who plants and is expecting a harvest, but they don't get a harvest. Most farmers will still persist at it. They never give up on farming, true farmers. So it's the same of you as a parent. Whether you get your child adopted or biological and they go haywire, you're just supposed to love them unconditionally, the way God loves us. Because God loves us, and we've really gone haywire at times, isn't it? But he never rejects us. We might reject him, but he never rejects us. That's a calling God has given adoptive parents, and I dare say biological parents too.
Okay. Yeah, again, very positive.
Yes.
And finally, Andre, just your final word, what's in your spirit in terms of adoption and our viewers?
Yeah, I think this being the, International Adoption Awareness Month is quite emotional for me because it speaks to the need for the entire society and our communities to be aware that there are people out there who need a home and who need love. And my encouragement to every individual adult that may want to adopt or family that is considering it is to not wait, to not look for that sign or all sorts of things that people think about, because when a family that gets biological children, most of them find themselves pregnant, not because they selected, but because it has happened. And so for me, there's really no need to process too much. Once you've made up your mind that you want a child, just approach an adoption agency, tell them of your interests and your desire that you would like to, host a child permanently, which is what is adoption, because there are various stages as well, like fostering is a temporary adoption. Just take the plunge and do it. And you will never regret, because most times you will find that it is you who is benefiting from the child than the other way around.
All right.
The fulfillment of love, the fulfillment of being able to give to somebody who cannot give back to you, and then eventually seeing how that person develops into a full person and a self-capable person. I think there is nothing that can compare to that in this world.
Yeah, and one of the takeaways from that is that don't wait for too sophisticated signs.
Yeah.
Slow down on that expectation.
down
You're
on
waiting
that.
for this eurekas and this
Moment,
these moments. No. Adoption is way easier in terms of doing it than think. If you feel the love and the openness, just plunge in, as you say.
Exactly.
Your final word.
The final word is I'm a believer. I'm a born again Christian, and I believe strongly that love covers over a multitude of wrongs. So, if you love that child unconditionally, and I dare say not just that child, but if you love anyone unconditionally, it will cover up the multitude of wrongs, because love is the strongest force in the world, and that's all adoption is about. It's just about love, that a force that is stronger than anything that can ever be. And where there's love, there's God. Where there's God, whatever will go wrong, He'll make right. So go for it. Trust God. Dare Him to do it for you.
All right.
He's done it for me. He's done it for them. He's done it for many. You're not different. He'll do it for you if you're trusting God for adoption.
Amen.
And having a family that way.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Wanjiro, for being open and sharing with our viewers your experience.
Yes.
Thank you, Andrea, also for your insights and your great encouragement, actually, that we should go for it.
Yes.
And, blessings to you as you continue to thrive in your family.
Yes.
And viewer, we've been talking to the members of the Adoptive Families Association of Kenya. That's Andre and Wanjiro. And I mean, what's coming out strongly is just this great insight that there are children who are born in different ways, and children who are adopted are born from the heart. This has been Spotlight. Thank you for watching.